Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Spiritual Journey podcast. My name is Nimesh Radia, and I'm your host. I always love starting the podcast by saying thank you. I feel so very blessed with this podcast, being guided to record it, kind of having the intention of simplifying spirituality and guiding people on their journey. I feel so very blessed with the messages I receive, knowing that actually it's achieving what I wanted it to. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Quick intro for me. I'm an Akashic record reader, Akashic trainer, podcast host, podcast creator, as well as a spiritual coach and mentor. I love what I get to do. I get to guide people to be their authentic selves, to shine their light. I'll always say my purpose is anyone I connect with, leave them better than I found them. And having this podcast, reading Akashic records, doing mentorship, whatever I need to, however I need to show up allows me to do that. So thank you for giving me that opportunity. One of the beauties of this podcast is I get to interview some amazing guests, and I'm excited to have Natalie on the podcast today. Natalie, I'd love for you to introduce yourself.
Thank you so much for having me on the podcast today. It is an honor to be here, and it's just a really beautiful moment to be sharing this space with you. I'm Natalie Byrne. I am the founder of a company called Blank Space that really focuses on the future that we could build together. I work with businesses and leaders, philanthropists, on not only how we're making a difference in, the business and capital and impact work we're doing, but telling that story and bringing people along, showing up in authentic leadership and creating movement. So that's my day job, which is really exciting. And I love the intersection with you and what we've discussed as friends and in these spaces, and excited to see what comes forward, because so much of that is driven by my own, what is the word I want to look, alignment to something bigger, and intention of bringing that into the world. And so I think it's really amazing to think about these intersections in our lives, personally, professionally, business wise. I don't think that anything is separate. So I'm excited to be here.
I totally agree. I'm excited for this conversation too. And I love the divine timing of interactions and how kind of soul contracts kind of come in. We've been talking for a couple of months now, and it just felt like we connected at the right time in terms of, I normally connect with people when they're going through some kind of major shift and kind of going through a rebirth, and somehow the universe kind of directs me. And I love the openness of our conversations. And, we've talked a lot about what's happening on the planet. We've talked a lot about kind of the shift that's happening from divine masculine to divine feminine, kind of what's also happening in the corporate world and the need to kind of guide and heal the corporate world from within. And also the fact how many of us are here to do something that's not been done before. And if we're going to do that, then letting go of our old human self and everything we've learned is a big part of it, right? If you're going to do something that's never been done before, then you're not going to do it from your history, from everything you've learned. You're going to do it from a different place, and it's coming from a different space. So when I ask you in terms of what have you been seeing in the world in terms of this shift, what are you seeing with the people you talk to? What have you seen, and kind of what have you been going through recently that you can share with us?
Wow. It's so amazing, because I feel is personally in my life has been showing up some of the things that you're speaking to about, letting go of old stories, old habits, old ways of thinking, in order to be, the woman I want to be, to show up in the way I want to show up, to serve. And it's happening all over the world. And I love thinking, when people think sometimes globally, it feels like so big and existential. But I actually love thinking about like your local community here, but that local community everywhere. So, much of my work takes me around the world, and you could be in London and hearing similar things to where I live here in California. You could be in South Africa, and there's different challenges, and they're showing up differently, and different cultures, behaviors, histories. And yet right now in this moment, I'm hearing a lot of the same to your point of, what does real leadership look like? You mentioned corporations, and it's really that could be these institutions of leadership that we're guided by or directed by. Um, and what that means in our own life and what that requires of us. So, as you mentioned, I'm happy to share with anyone listening that I've been going through my own ups and downs in that process. And here in America, we had a very challenging election recently that many people heard about and were watching, that created a lot of rifts and a lot of miscommunications and a lot of fighting. And I'm so interested in putting all of that stuff aside and kind of connecting in our core. And I think there's so much more that brings us together. And this isn't just happening in America. This isn't just happening in my neighborhood. This is happening all over the world.
Sorry, I was on a problem with the mute button there, but it is an interesting time on the planet, right? And I don't really get into the topic of politics, but just to kind of touch on what's happening on the planet. I feel like the planet is going through a massive shift, and everybody's playing the roles they're meant to. So, you mentioned the U.S. elections. Even that, I feel like there's meant to be a lot of disruption as we go through the shift. I mean, look at the weather, the recent weather, and the craziness of the weather. And it's even, I mean, I was in Bali a few weeks ago, and it was rainy season, and sure, and I didn't really get caught up on it. But I look at some of the videos in Bali now, and there's floods and torrential rain like they've never seen before. And you look at so many different places, and you look at all the wars and the politics, and I really do feel like the planet is going through a shift, and it will be for a couple of years. And I feel like we have a choice. Do we get lost in that chaos, or do we choose to do the internal work that you kind of mentioned? And there isn't a right or wrong choice. Everybody's going to make their own individual choice. But I do feel like what's happening on the planet is also happening to us individually. We can all feel a shift inside, and it's making us uncomfortable. It's making us kind of like, because, I talk about this quite a lot. The way the humans are built, change is uncomfortable. Everyone talks about, I love change. Yes, I embrace it. And I feel like most people love change when they can see it coming, when they know what it looks like. When you can feel a shift inside you, but you don't know what it's going to look like, it's going to be something different, that can be really uncomfortable. And I know personally, I can feel a shift happening inside me, and my human would love to know what's coming. The human would be like, oh my God, I really want to plan for this. I want to get excited for it. But the spiritual side of me just doesn't need to know. Just trust. And I feel like that conflict. Yeah.
God put the blanket on and wants to stay in, and you can't.
You can't. And that's the thing. We don't have that choice, right? We've got to show up, and we've got to manage both sides. Both sides are needed, right? A lot of people say, oh my God, the death of the ego and all that sort of stuff. No, your human side is needed. It's just trying to keep you safe. We're a soul having a human experience, but the spiritual side, the one that's free and the one that wants to embrace this change and wants to embrace your gifts, and that's the version we need to embrace right now. And I love the time we're in, and I love to remind people that as souls, you chose to be here at this time. So you chose to, as this planet's going through a shift, your soul made the choice to be here, to be part of the shift. And what if you could see this shift as a blessing, and knowing that you're a big part of whatever's coming next? Actually,
Wow.
I felt your energy for a while, and we've connected, and we talked about it before we started recording. There's a shift, and there's a role that you've got to play in it. How do you feel about that?
I mean, you are saying so much of what I feel in my heart to be true about us being here right now, all of us. And I mentioned in the beginning, I work with leaders and CEOs and philanthropists, And I really believe that it doesn't matter who you are or what you're doing, that leadership is in us all, and standing up for what that looks like in our own life, in integrity and in alignment and in a new way. You know, when you were describing the weather patterns, it made me think about, this is a little off, but it fits in because I do work like in the climate world, in climate solutions and things like that. And something that is holding us back in that space, that I think you're mentioning here, that I think personally could really help people to think about themselves not as separate from nature, but as part of it. We love to talk about nature as this thing outside of ourselves, and yet what's happening in the rainforest or what's happening in the ocean is also happening to us because we are all part of this nature
100%.
and
Mm.
this planet. So you are touching on the need to let go of that separation of ourselves, and maybe the things that show up in our own lives, in our own families, in our own neighborhoods that have hurricane like
Sure.
storm
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. I'm
velocity,
sure people can relate. I'm sure people can relate.
ferociousness, and how are we handling that in our own life, and becoming, one to move through it. And when I say that, I don't have like a idealistic view of sitting in cross-legged chanting and all your problems going away. I'm definitely not trying to water us down or take away from the challenges that we're facing, because I think that now more than ever we're facing isolation and loneliness and mental well-being,
Yeah.
physical well-being. So the things that people are feeling in their lives is very real. So if we think about what's happening outside the window or on the news, and we think about what's happening in our lives, I kind of get to a what can we do to be part of that shift, to be part of the positive momentum. I'm curious what your where you land on that. And for me, there's so much around taking responsibility for your individual experience and integrity and life, and at the same time being a part of that collective community of nature, of the bigger thing. So I'm curious, on
It's
what do you think about that?
I mean, that's a really powerful question. And there's something wanted to mention before I go into that is, when I say that everybody chose to be here, everyone has a role to play, and I want every listener to know I'm talking to you. That came to me because it's just so often we listen to things and we kind of think he's not talking about me, he's talking about everybody else. Now, if you're listening to this podcast, you're meant to be here. You chose to be here. You have a role to play, and it's important that you recognize it was a choice and that you have the power to make a difference. And I felt that really powerfully as you were talking, and and in terms of your question, it's really interesting. I really do believe we're all part of one energy, one vibration, whether you call it nature, whether you call it the planet, kind of the vibration, whatever, we're all part of one. We're all connected in some kind of way, but we also have our own individual roles to play within that. And no one person's role, in my opinion, is any more or less important than everybody else's.
Mhm.
Everybody's connected in some kind of way, right? And it's like, it's knowing that you're all part of one, and you have we're all part of a co-creation. So whatever we're working on, we're doing it together. But that doesn't mean that you can let go of your own personal responsibility, because you're a soul having a human experience, which means your soul's here to experience certain things, to expand and to fulfill your destiny, which is important in the bigger scheme, in the greater scheme of things. Because I have this conversation so often about, well, hold on, if my destiny's been decided, why bother? Because you have free will. And this phase that we're in right now, and you talked about Mother Nature and the planet, and then you talked about everybody going through the same thing. We are all going through a shift. is really interesting. It's like I talk about the shift from divine masculine to divine feminine. I also feel like we're shifting from the individual, the ego of the individual, all these kind of megastars and leaders, and I feel like we're shifting to community. But the shift that we're going through, the shift from divine masculine to divine feminine, what is causing us is for the divine masculine us to be in crisis and the divine feminine us trying to find identity. So all of this feeling that we're going through a massive change and we feel like no one else understands us and we're going through it all on our own, it's because we're all going through the same shift. So look for your communities, look for your people. And, you asked a really powerful question, Natalie, in terms of, is there a connection between what we're all going through? Yes, there is. But you can only find your community if you're open to it. There's a big difference between being alone and being lonely.
Mm.
And, we're recording this actually, ironically, just before Christmas. And Christmas can be the most loving period, also the most lonely period. And as we kind of come into 2025, I guess, as listeners, how did Christmas go for you? How open were you to magic? How lonely do you really feel? How open are you to finding a community that can hold your space? No one's going to understand your story fully because you're unique. But maybe you can find a community that you can feel part of. Because again, I'm naturally about this conversation. It's just so many of us have always kind of never felt part of this planet, never felt like we belong. So let me ask you, how does that make you feel? Do you feel, growing up, did you feel like you belong to this planet? And how do you feel now?
Yeah. Well, speaking to the time of year too, and what you were just touching on, and I think there's a lot of people will be listening to this at the beginning of the new year and going through the holidays, and there's such a swirl and craziness. There is so much love and connection, and there's so much isolation and loneliness. And to answer your question about, feeling alone, of course, that's been part of my path. I'm someone who has come into this world with a lot of big, crazy ideas that people think are not possible, which is one of the reasons why I named my company Blank Space. Because if we don't get to a blank space, we don't get to the canvas, we're never going to be able to paint it. It's the
I love that name, by
listening.
the way. Blank
Thank
space.
you.
I love
And
it.
that's this new world. We have to get there. So in the divineness of that lonely feeling, if we're not talking about the dark depths of it, there is possibility, there's creation, there's sparks. So if this is still the beginning of January, I encourage everyone to take a moment of blank space for their spark, so it doesn't feel lonely, it feels like opportunity. In my childhood, as we were just talking about, I faced that so many times, and people thought I was crazy, and I figured I was an alien. Many people would probably still agree with that statement, but in 2025, we're in a time when you can have a crazy idea. I mean, that's probably one of the reasons why I live in California, because people move here with crazy ideas and then they become reality. Walt Disney is a great entrepreneur when you think of it as someone who came up with his entire imagination coming to life over and over again. So there's so many things to be excited about as we move into an era where being crazy or different or thinking big or, wanting to challenge so much hate and anger out there with love and connection it's ripe for that. The time is now for that. Um, but it's also, I emphasize, it's still a hard road, and it's a hard road for us all the time. I'm no stranger to that. One thing that in our friendship, and as you said, finding your community, that's a lot of other people who just listen and see and hear and believe. I call them dream believers, people who just believe in your dream, and that can mean everything.
Powerful, powerful stuff. And it's really is an interesting time. And you said it's challenging. And I think about all through 2024, it's like I kind of I channel the records multiple times, but I do it like a monthly message. And every month I was almost waiting for it to not to be intense. And every month the message was, yes, this is still an intense period, and it's still an intense period. And I kind of came to the conclusion that this is just an intense period. This is a time, this is a moment in time that the planet and us individually as souls kind of planned for this, as in our souls work lifetimes to be here. The planet's been going through so many shifts. This feels like it's divinely timed. So if you're waiting for the intensity to slow down, maybe it's not going to slow down. Maybe it's not meant to, right? Maybe the shift is a shift, and we've got to ride the wave. And we talked about it before. For me, my guidance is always to, if you can let go of your expectations and just ride the wave and just enjoy this period, it really can be more ease and grace. The more you kind of hold on to rigid expectations of how you feel the future is going to look like, the more I feel you're going to struggle. And by the way, it's easy for me to say that, right? It is really easy for me to say that, but take a look at the last year, the last 2-3 years. How much control have we really had? And if we could let go of our expectations of what magic would look like, what connecting with our guides, what spiritual connection looks like, if we could just let go and just truly embrace whatever magic we feel in this moment, what if the connection gets even better? And by the way, going back to your company name, Blank Space, I love that for the vibration right now, because that is what we're going through right now. It's just a blank space. We don't know what the future holds. It's a blank space. I'd love to know more about where you came up with that name and what it means to you.
It actually dovetails so well to what you were just saying around, I think one of the keys to directing that blank space into the positive, is intention. And I think intention is also what is needed now in the leadership, in business, in our own lives, whether you're a parent or a spouse or a daughter or a son or a friend, right? Intention of what you're making creates the alchemy of where it goes. So you have the blank space. I usually suggest aligning, ahead of that. So you go into yourself, you get into your groundedness, into connecting. You go into that blank space where anything is possible. Sometimes it's a hard period to get to the blank space, or something difficult makes it come up for you if you're just refusing to see
Sure.
things in new eyes. Um, and then it's all about intention. And again, it's so important to what you said about letting go of sort of outcomes or needing to know what's going to happen. But having that intention of what this could do or what this could mean or how this could affect people changes the alchemy of what's created. And I feel you can feel that. You can feel that when you come in contact with a business, let's just say, to make it outside of an individual purposely. When you come across like a chocolate bar, let's say, since it's the holidays and we're all indulging a little. I love chocolate. And you're like, what is this? And why is this chocolate telling me the ingredients that are not in it? And why is it talking about these women who harvested the cacao, and how the love that went into the community once these families started? I mean, that's what I talk about, where intention matters, and we can do that in little things in our lives.
So, so beautiful. And you're so right. Intention is such a big part of, I talk about letting go and kind of riding the wave, but knowing what your intention is such a big part of it because that drives you day to day. It's your kind of your why. And I always say my purpose is anyone I connect with leaving better than I found them. That is my intention, is to show up and where I'm meant to say, wherever the universe wants me to go, and just show up, do the best that I can, channel whatever messages. And there's so much power in letting go and just trusting in that journey. And as you say, it does not always easy, right? Words can be easy, but just an interesting time. I'd love to know more about your journey, kind of anything that comes into your heart that you want to share and maybe can help people and guide people on the shifting that they're going through. But anything that you comes to your heart that you want to share about what you've been through and what you're going through?
Yeah, yes, that's wonderful to kind of circle back into our own experiences. And at the top of the year, at the end of the year, during this time, I always try to take inventory um, of what's working, what you want to leave, and say thank you for these challenges and lessons, and I can leave them now. in last year, but you're expanding and growing, so it's actually like the perfect time to think back.
Yeah, 100%.
I also love looking back to when you were a kid and around middle school years, you know how you wanted to spend your time when you were playing, what you were doing. So you're older than a really little kid. You have some ideas of like choice, like, oh, I really want to put on a play with my friends, or oh, I really liked being alone and experimenting with different things in test tubes and playing with all the science, or I wanted to dance, or I wanted to play a musical instrument. I feel like there's so much guidance to our inner purpose, and and what drives us in passion and fun. Um, that to me unlocks so much, where we get so focused on, oh, I need to be good at this, or how we have all these books out there now, like I'm only going to work 2 days or 1 day, or I'm going to get abs overnight. And it's
Yeah,
like
exactly.
absolutely 4 shortcuts. I really believe in following passion and what's lighting us up. So in my own journey to get here, of what I do for a living, for example, it just it didn't exist. It wasn't a thing. Like now we take for granted that people think about doing good and making a difference, that these were not words. Impact was not a word. Impact was about, like, if an asteroid fell and hit the ground, how large an impact it would make. So it's become this whole new category. And when I go way back to being young and thinking about what joy I had in like writing and sharing that and telling stories, and I actually studied journalism in university, and I loved the idea that by meeting someone and asking good questions, that you just figure out something that lit them up, that might inspire you. Um, and so that curiosity and that love for people's why, I would say, if I had to sum it up, like why people do the things they do, um, it's sort of what led me on this path, and to the point of letting go of everything to become who you can become. I never knew what I was doing or where I was going, and I was always trying to um, invent something new, and I was always getting in trouble. I was always the person that the boss was mad at because I was asking questions that didn't have anything to do with like the marketing report we were looking at. And it's I I'm trying to think of the best way to answer this. I mean, it's like the ups and downs of like what works and what doesn't, and just keep going, but having this focus on what makes you light up and what's passionate for you, and that translates for the world around you. And I would say for someone, because it's so important how you grounded this conversation, and whoever is listening is meant to listening. I'll tell a story of one of my dearest friends who's um, so passionate, and everyone's always so surprised to find out he's an accountant. It's like if you could just name the reactions and of that. And we've spent hours talking about it because he's like, I think I should just throw away my whole career and no one understands. But there's just this like innate balancing that he does no matter what he's doing and all the other side activities and, reading film scripts and putting on plays and playing musical instruments. This part of him that's an accountant, he always felt like this doesn't fit. I need to change it. And I actually didn't believe that. And he's now in this place where in that work, he gets to serve in new ways and follow the other passions and support these other things. So I just want to say that you don't have to be an entrepreneur coming up with some crazy idea for a company to make changes like this or to
Yeah.
trust your gut or your instinct like this. So I felt compelled to say something along those lines so that someone isn't going, well, this crazy woman, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, I mean, remember, you're also an inspiration, right? And it's just that, just remind people that we're all on a unique path. I feel like a lot of people are challenging who they are, what careers they're meant to do. And it comes back to what's your intention. It really does. It sounds like such a simple question. And, if all roles are important, right? I said this earlier, and it's just, if what you do inspires you, then great. If it doesn't, then maybe challenge yourself. What is your intention? I feel like a lot of us are being activated, our gifts are being activated. What do I mean by that? I mean, gifts, when I talk about gifts, a lot of people think about Reiki or Akashic Records, or for me, they're modalities. When I talk about gifts, their gifts are natural, they are light. We all have a natural light which makes a difference. And, we all have natural intuition. Our empathic abilities are natural. The difference our light makes on others is such a natural thing. And I feel like a light is changing in a lot of us, and we are being activated. And that's forcing us to look in the mirror and to challenge who we are. And that is, it's like you talked about your accountant friend. Being an accountant or whatever you do as a listener doesn't define who you are, doesn't define how you're shining your light. Your light it's really important that we focus on shining our light naturally in this stage. It's really important that we put ourselves at the center of our world, because when we do that, our light becomes so much brighter and we become an inspiration to others.
What you're saying also circles back to a couple minutes ago when you brought up this shift from masculine and feminine that we're all feeling. We're seeing, we're feeling. And that sounds too like it could be such a big concept, but in our own lives, how is that showing up? And that's something that shows up in me, every day. I am a woman who works in some of these big institutions, corporations that are been run by not just men, but these structures of hierarchy and, you know, masculine tendencies. And
Yeah.
I embodied those. That's what helped me get ahead. And in the past few years, I've noticed such a shift where I've had to stop. I kind of think about it as taking off my armor. I had to stop like feeling like I was going into battle to change people's ways of doing things and, getting my idea across. And all these idiots who just don't get it. Like, when am I going to? And I
I
share
can.
that because it's been such a journey of in where I am today, and part of what has been sort of dying off in my own evolution is that need to like sort of fight and assert and win to make the change that I see in the world, and allow, and sit and align and try and show up in a much softer way, in a much more open, vulnerable way, which can be hard because that's not how we're trained. And as a woman, I think I tended to be in this survival mode, and I didn't want anything to do with, emotion driven at business. And who am I kidding? I'm the most emotional, passionate, like wear my heart on my sleeve, authentic. Like I wasn't kidding anyone. I was just like pretending. And so I've now realized that these are strengths that I can, cry because something like really terrible happened and we
Of course.
lost a huge, you know, um, deal or whatever it may be, and express that why and that feeling and the community that can exist in all those too. So I share that. I don't know if that's helpful to listeners to know that
That's
I
super
myself am
helpful.
going through that
Yeah.
transition.
I mean that's a perfect example of the shift from divine masculine to divine feminine. The divine masculine in you allowed you to get this space. You had to use your ego, you had to use your voice, you had to fight to find your place. And that is an example of the old world, right? That was very masculine, very ego driven, very, you were a female in a masculine world, so you had to fight even harder to be heard. And so now this is what I'm saying about the shift that's happening. All the fighting you've done as a divine masculine has now given you credibility in the world, which gives you that credibility. But now as we shift to divine feminine, and as you let go of that old version of you, the credibility you have in the world as you activate the divine feminine allows you to impact more change. So you couldn't impact the change that you're going to impact on the planet if you hadn't gone through the divine masculine, which is why for me is a great example of it's like a microcosm of what everybody's going through, what the planet's going through. It's like it has all been about masculine, right? You look at the power, the kind of the egos that were there, the power, the wars. It's all been around the masculine. So we all had to fight. And, from a female perspective, I'm sure you had to fight even more to have your voice heard. But now it's a case of, okay, now you have that credibility, which opens doors for you. Now you have the opportunity to use that as you activate the feminine in you to really impact change. And how does that make you feel? Does that resonate?
Oh, 100%. In so many ways. The softness of it and the allowing of it, it seems so simple and easy, and it's not. Um, our entire society, here we are at the top of the new year. People are listening in from around the world. And I guess that some of them have made a list of the goals that they have for the year, some by
Yeah.
the quarter, like this is what I want in the beginning, in the middle, and by third quarter. Some people have weight loss goals or, dating goals or whatever it may be. And, you know, I don't believe in that. I don't think that system works anymore. And what does it look like I go back to what are we leaving behind? What do we want more of? And and potentially just taking things off our plate. I know that's what I need to do. Trying to do everything and be everywhere and, you know, run as fast as I can. I just noticed as you're talking about like a shift for everyone in the planet, I just noticed that those things aren't working the same way they used to. So being a lot slower and intentional and quiet is opening up so much more action in my life and
Yeah.
possibility and opportunity in a way where okay, this is a really interesting analogy. But if anyone has ever I remember one of my favorite classes in school is when we were learning about conception. We actually got to watch in the micro, like what happens, right? And so you have this frenzy of millions, I think, maybe it's billions, but I think it's millions of sperm and one egg that's just hanging out. And it looks like the moon in the sky, just this giant egg. It's just sitting there like the blank space with all possibilities. So, I share I think that we can be more of the egg in this new year
I
and
love
less
it.
of
I love
a
it.
frenetic swarm.
I love it. Actually, that's a great analogy. It's that the old way of doing things was to try and do everything because hold on, what if we miss out? We've
Mm-hmm.
got to do this. We've got to do this because we may miss out, right? It's that. And then you said finding the peace. For me, that's really powerful. What that means is becoming quiet and listening to yourself, and then becoming that one sperm, picking the one thing that inspires you. What if
With
we truly
direction.
embrace? Yeah.
Yeah.
What if we truly embrace that nothing is missing, and whatever's for us will find us? And what if then focusing on less actually means so much more? Means that
Yes.
you do quality over quantity. Because we always worry about missing out. But then we try and do everything, which means that when you try and do everything, are you really embracing life? I mean, I talked about we're a soul having a human experience. The human experience is what we're here to experience. And it's like you mentioned earlier, I mean, so many people are trying to bypass the human experience. Give me a quick fix. Go to the gym and all of a sudden I have a six pack. It doesn't work that way. We have to do the work. I mean, that's what we're here to do, right? And trust me, if I could spend all my time in the spiritual realm, meditating and kind of talking to my guides, and that's what I would do. I mean, that's my happy space. But I know I've got some human stuff to do too. So, it's that balance, right? But as we go into this year, my advice, I agree on New Year's resolutions and all that sort of stuff. How long do they really last? By the middle of January, we're but actually having an intention, making a decision to truly listen to you, be at peace, listen to your intuition, connect with your guides, whether you call that a New Year's resolution or whether you call that just a decision to embrace a new vibration, that is what I'd highly recommend. That doesn't mean, by the way, just as Natalie's already said, doesn't mean you become less busy. It means that you become active and doing the things that you enjoy to do. Not always easy, by the way, because the old version of you is used to being busy and doing all these things and but if you can embrace and listen to you, everything you need is inside you. And that would be my advice for this new year. And it's really interesting because, my plan is to release this episode on January the 2nd. This will be the 202nd episode. So it's all the twos. And I love the numbers. And two in my world is wisdom. And just, kind of what we're trying to say here is, for me, it feels like a lot of wisdom coming through. So I don't know. It just came to my mind to talk about the twos. And like I said, two means wisdom to me. So, but Natalie, I'd love to, we haven't really talked about the corporate world and the kind of shift. I feel, so I spent many years in the corporate world and, I left the corporate world to really focus on the healing. I feel a nudge to kind of maybe do some healing within the corporate world at some point soon. And we talked about that a little bit too, but it's that, but I do feel a shift in the corporate world and I feel it more within individuals within the corporate world, rather than the corporations. A lot of corporations talk about mindfulness and all these kind of things that are kind of right now, supposedly making people more aware. But I feel like there's individuals within corporations who are going through a shift and are looking for something different. And for me, they are the key to potentially doing some healing within the corporate world. I'm curious if that's something that resonates with you.
100%. I get asked a lot, and not in a good way, and more of a, on other people's podcasts, I'll have a gotcha moment that's very much like, why do you work with evil corporations that are ruining everything? And I'm like, oh my goodness gracious, that is so dramatic. And I understand the constructs of the way that the system is working is not working. Like, that is something that I think we are all agreeing upon, even finally now in the past year, the people at the top. So
Yeah.
we did well, with having those conversations, because the people at the top are talking about how the system isn't working. So that's a good sign. And um, thinking about how to help it work better, corporations are made of people. Exactly what you're saying. I think of it as like a city of citizens, and there's leadership that is directing and this orchestra. You could also think of it. There's a conductor conducting the orchestra, but without the violins and the cellos and the piano and the drums, there is nothing that's happening. So in so much of my work, I'm both working with the leadership because it's incredibly important with intention and focus, values, the mission of a company. I call it value driven business, how we're looking at what matters and how that's ripple effect in everything we do. And the people that make that up and the people that make that important. And so 100% agree with you. I love that work. And there's a process that you can do, which is aligning the company as a whole, and then how that individually aligns with each person. So they're all a part of the mission as well. There's been some really public examples of how this has gone wrong in the past few years, and those companies have had huge changes. CEOs thrown out because we're asking for something different and we're
Yeah.
asking for something better. And that's not to say that we need to have more accountability and more transparency. And there's so much issues and, extractive habits and things that are happening there that are not good. But companies are made of people, and
Yeah.
people are driven with intention and purpose and heart. So I love that idea. Maybe you and I have a business to do together in the
For
new
sure.
year,
For sure.
helping.
For sure. There's definitely that calling. There's that nudge. I've been having this conversation about corporate change too much. And I know I spent so long in corporate for a reason. And I know that I've got to, at some point, I love the one-to-one work. I love kind of what I get to do. But also, I know that we can impact some change from within by working with individuals who then can impact a lot of difference. And maybe that message also goes out to our listeners. If you're working in whatever role you're doing, don't ever think that your life's not important. Your light is not important. You can impact change and stay the course, because it's so easy to get lost in the noise. And this is what I said at the beginning, is like, all these big corporations and the noise and the politics, it's so easy to kind of really get lost in all that noise and really kind of, I don't live in the US, and if that political result happened, if I lived there, I don't know if it would have impacted me more. But it was really interesting watching from the outside and just kind of how it consumed people for a little while. And I was just like, I would encourage people to focus on things that can change. And of course, kind of, if you don't agree with something the company's doing, don't support them or whatever that, but don't get lost in the emotion of that. Because for me, that also means that you're choosing not to focus on what's happening inside you and the healing. If something's triggering you outside, for me, that's an opportunity to heal something inside. So if you're being triggered something externally, then slow down and ask, well, hold on. Why does this trigger me? What part of me inside needs to heal? Because everything in your external world is a result of something in your internal world. So there is something that your body, your psyche is trying to teach you. And again, I'm not telling you not to focus. And what I choose when I see wars and stuff in the world is I choose to send love. I choose, and who knows what difference that makes, but does it really matter? So I choose to send as much unconditional love to those people in pain. And again, pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. So I truly believe that there's so much shifting in the planet. There's so many soul contracts coming to an end where, it's painful, right? Some soul contracts coming to an end is painful. But how often do we stay in a situation longer than we need to, and that causes suffering? This is why at the beginning of the year, I challenge people to really ask, who in your world have you completed your soul contract with? And it's a beautiful thing to do at the beginning and let go of those people that no longer serve.
And not being afraid to make a change. I'm really feeling what you're saying, and I have been in those big companies, and sometimes you can make a shift within a company. You could say, this unit I'm in is not serving me anymore. And sometimes you need to find a new job. And don't be afraid to go after something and what you desire in this new year. I really feel endless possibility for all of us.
So Natalie, I don't know if it's just on my side, but your noise is coming through a little bit
Oh,
broken.
okay. Let me see here.
And by the way, as I say on this podcast all the time, is I don't edit anything. Whatever comes through is clearly the energy and the vibration of the conversations is high, and that has an impact. That's probably what we're impacting, or what's impacting right now.
It says it's reconnecting. Am I still coming in and out? Oh,
High. So as I was saying, the energy and the vibration was clearly high. So there was a brief intermission where we lost Natalie. Natalie, you're back. So I'm going to hand it back to you.
it's funny because I haven't moved out of my office. I'm in the same space. So I definitely feel like we're sending off little tech fireworks.
It means we're channeling something at a high level. So it's all good. It's all good. I love it.
I'm not sure exactly where I cut off. But I think I was talking just about not being afraid to create some change in
Yeah.
this new year as you're thinking about everything we're saying and you're feeling all the change out there, um embracing it and going after making small steps to make your everyday happier and more fulfilling is worth it. And I think that's where I see so many people think like, oh, you started a business and you did this and you are like endless bravery and I'm not. And that's not how I've helped so many people in my direct life just go after a promotion or a shift in company or moving to a new city or just small things to help their heart light up, because I don't think we have to ever feel like things have plateaued. I think that's what I was getting
Sure.
at.
For
And
sure.
then my internet plateaued.
Yeah. Well, no, isn't the universe interesting, right? And I mean, for me, as we enter into this new age, new kind of vibration, I would encourage putting self-care at the center of your world, because spending time with you, spending time in meditation, spending time in nature, listening to your messages, doing some sort of physical activity, all of you putting it at the center of your world allows you to really understand what you want. If you're going to make some even minor shifts, it's easy to kind of follow the usual trend, kind of focus on, losing, giving some weight away. I look at it more as giving it away rather than losing it. Or, kind of this promotion or this job change. We talked about rebirth. As you kind of getting to know this new version of you, what really inspires you?
Mm.
What excites you? What impact do you want to make on the world? And it's easy for us to follow a program life, right? Follow what we've always done. But I would challenge our listeners to really ask and really kind of commit to doing something different. Einstein would say definition of insanity is doing the same thing, expect a different set of results. So what are you going to do differently? What if that difference is spend more time in meditation, spend more time journaling, spend more time in nature, and listen to your heart? I always recommend shifting from I think to I feel. That for me is like the biggest thing as we go from masculine to feminine, is just shifting our language from I think to I feel. If you're thinking of doing something different, how do you feel about it? Instead of how do you think about it? Because thinking is all from the mind. It's all from your human self. Feeling is from your heart. And how does that? So Natalie, let me ask you, if you were to shift when you're making decisions, how much of it is more from the head? How much is from the heart?
I love that. That is so powerful to start the year thinking in that way. Such a simple shift. Something I always like to do that I would encourage everybody as like a good practice maybe to try out. I try to intentionalize the year with a word. and then I can go back to it throughout the year. So um, I think what for some reason this year's word is not coming to me, which I don't. That's not a good sign. The year before was flourishing, and I made sure that I felt like everything that I was doing and encompassing was helping me to flourish, helping me to continue to blossom and grow. Um, I, I can't remember what this year's word is, but I feel like I need to pick next year something like relax.
Yeah, just
or
be, just be.
or be, yeah, be, just be, something like that. That's the direction I'm going in this very feminine egg like beginning to 2025 that I want to manifest.
I love it. I love it. So as we close out the episode, I'll include your details in the show notes, etc. But I'd love for you to talk about the services you offer, and if people wanted to reach out,
Mm.
how would that look like, and kind of what areas do you provide support if somebody wanted to work with you?
Oh, it's amazing. Thank you. And I love that. My website is blankspaceworks.com. So WORKS at the end. And there is a way to get in contact with me from that page. And then obviously social and all of that. That's Nat M Byrne. So NATM Marie, my middle name. That's the middle initial, and then Byrne, BYRNE. So you can feel free to share those. The way that you've heard a little bit of how I work with big companies, I work with individuals as well, and it's really about, do you feel like you're in a transition where you want to do more? Are you building a company or an initiative to help the community? Is there something that is in your heart that feels like a bigger purpose is emerging? Um, uh, many Some of the clients that I work with that I love this work is with founders who are either going through the process of scaling their business, and also after they've sold, because now they have their company and they have capital to make a difference with, and they're thinking about their bigger purpose beyond that. So that's in macro. I'm actually going to be launching next year some workshops and opportunities for groups of people who might be also going through similar transitions or moments, or ways that they want to take a big bite out of 2025.
That's exciting, and I feel like there is a lot more that you're going to be shifting in 2025. So I would encourage people to watch this space, and I will include your socials and your website in the show notes, and follow Natalie and follow her journey. I'm sure there's things that she's going to be doing, that she's already done, and she will be doing that's inspirational. So
Thank
thank you
you.
for joining me on this podcast. Thank you for agreeing to be a guest. As we again close out this episode, if is anything that's in your heart that you want to share with our listeners, that may be a journal prompt, or kind of encourage them to go deeper on the conversation that we've had?
I will say it forever. Find your blank space. It is something that came to me in my own meditation, and I realized was something that could be implemented by businesses, by people, by the world. And it's not hard, it's all around us. And maybe a journal prompt around that would be, you know, if I am in a blank space, if I give myself, the endless possibilities of what tomorrow could bring, what is in my heart, what do I want to do that makes a difference, and how can I find joy in all of that? So thank you. And I'm actually working on a book on the blank space method. So maybe it'll be
Beautiful.
my next year, maybe there'll be something that can help people at the beginning of the year find their blank space. Thank you so much for inviting me on here. I would say one thing that I really take away from our time together, not to be be missed by any of your listeners, because I know they come back over and over again for this, but the way that you do thread spirituality and connectivity and the bigger purpose into everything. It's not just in the conversation with me. This is with everything you do. I'm so grateful. The world is so lucky to have you in it. And thank you
Oh,
for being
thank
on
you.
this journey with me.
Thank you. And you're definitely a blessing in my life. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I will. One thing that you've actually made me think of is what's my word for 2025. And I've still got a week this year left. And I'll probably change it. But right now, if I was to put on the spot, what word came to me was inspire.
Ooh.
And what I mean by that is, like I said, my purpose is anyone I connect with, leave them better than I found them. So if each episode inspires one person to do something different, then I've achieved what I want to do. So right now, my word is inspire. May change, but I'll encourage everyone that's listening. What's your word for 2025? We can set all these, intentions and all these kind of New Year's resolutions, but if you could pick one word that is going to inspire you through the year, that's going to kind of really set your intention, I challenge you to pick one word, not a sentence. I feel that's really powerful. So thank you for sharing that. Thank you, everyone. I'm sending everyone so much love and light. I really do wish that you feel the vibrational shift that's happening. Yes, it's a new calendar year, but the shift that's happening on the planet has been going on for a while. Really kind of feel into it. If you could ride the wave and truly trust what's coming next, I feel that this next phase would be more ease and grace. Sending so much love and light. Again, thank you, Natalie. Sending everyone lots of love and light. Bye for now.